Apple announced a new iPhone and watch this week, but are the new features enough for you to fork over some cash? We'll talk about the good, the bad, and the really cringy parts of the latest launch event on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me to talk about Apple's latest launch event is Ken Mingus. He is the executive editor of Computer World, and Michael Simon, the executive editor of Macworld. Welcome back to the show, gents.
Hey, Keith.
So, what were your overall thoughts of this event? This was the big iPhone 15, Apple Watch Series 9. What were your overall thoughts? Was there any announcements that you were surprised by or excited most for? Michael, we'll start with you.
All right, surprises? Not really.
Yeah, not a lot. Okay.
I mean, I kind of got, it's my job to watch these events and report on them and write on them. And so now we're in day 2, and I usually have a mountain of ideas. I don't have a ton of things to say beyond these are the new iPhones and these are the new Apple Watches. And, listen, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
They're the best iPhones, obviously, but they're also probably the best smartphones ever made. iPhone 15 Pro Max particularly. There's a lot of great things, a lot of great upgrades, but it's getting really hard for Apple to sell us on the iPhone hype and excitement year after year after year. I don't mean to start on such a negative note. I do work for Macworld. I am, listen, the iPhone's, it's a great device.
Okay.
But the overall sense that I got during that presentation was, okay.
Is it just because we've now gone through 15 plus iterations, or is it like it might not even be 15, but that many iterations of the iPhone that they can't give you something that you've never seen before?
Think about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Go ahead, Mike. Okay, real quick. I mean, think about it this way. It is almost impossible to iterate big wow generating features every single year. Okay. So that's a given. So, the changes and the advances you're going to see, a lot of the big ones are under the hood, as Michael was talking about. We're moving to 3 nanometer chips. Most people may not care about that, but in terms of technology, that's a noteworthy accomplishment. But remember now, unlike the old days when you didn't get any information about the devices that were coming before the event, we knew a lot of what was going to be announced yesterday, and that's
we knew all of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't see anything that I hadn't heard before, so it's just sort of confirming what everybody's been talking about for weeks, and I think that sort of makes it a little harder for Apple to generate a lot of wow. It's like, okay, yeah, we're getting the new color, the blue. We're going to 3 nanometer chips. The different camera and the Pro and Pro Max versions. Is it going to be more expensive or less? Well, it looks like not so much in the US, maybe more in Europe and other parts of the world. So it's I say this because I know that one of the reasons I'm on this conversation every year is the question, is Ken going to buy a new iPhone? The answer is yes. I am. I'm going to buy a new iPhone. What a surprise.
Don't spoil it, Ken. We wait till the end for those.
I'm ready to go. But as I was watching the event, I used to be glued to these things, watching every nuance, the only thing I cared about is when's the damn thing going on sale? When can I get it? How much is it going to cost? And, so it was a solid event. These are great phones, as Michael says, they're probably the best in the world, maybe, certainly the best Apple's ever done. But, I wasn't blown away.
Yeah. When I was watching, I was recording another episode yesterday during the live event, and when we were done, I was able to go and view the stream. It was already on demand at that point, so I loved the fact that I could jump ahead and skip some of the music video stuff that they always do, and the Mother Nature sketch, which we're going to get to, and jump ahead a little bit. But then I could also pause and then write some of my notes while I was doing that. So I did appreciate that versus the Vision Pro event where I did watch it live, and then it didn't feel as even the Vision Pro event was probably longer, but I didn't feel longer than this one. This one just felt long to me.
WWDC was way longer than this one, probably close to twice as long.
So let's go into some of the things that I did take notes on for. Let's start with the Apple Watch. They do have is this the first time that they've had the new Apple chips in the watch? I couldn't tell whether it was the switch over or is it just a new version of their Apple chip?
Yeah, so they've had the S series chip since the original. That's their own chip. What's interesting this year is since the S6, which was in the Apple Watch Series 6, the chip hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. They've changed the name of it.
Okay.
S6, S7, S8. But for all intents and purposes, they're identical. Dual core, 64-bit, same processor speed, same everything. So this new one, the S9, is different. It's faster. They said 20% or 10%. It wasn't like that much faster.
Yeah.
The main improvements are on the graphics side. I don't think it really matters. I have an S8. Before that, I had an SE. Never once did I say I wish the chip was better.
Okay.
Like, it's such a small little computer that you're driving.
And the other thing that I found interesting was this idea of the double tap gesture, because that's something that's new for the watch. But it also then shows you how Apple is getting into the gesture game, because it's almost the same thing that they're going to do with the Vision Pro whenever that comes out.
Ding, 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 ding,
so that's
bingo.
The connection of like, okay, we're going to train you on your watch on how to do this, so that when the Vision Pro comes out, you'll be, a gesture expert. Now, obviously, they use examples of like, if you're on a rock wall and you need to answer a phone, you don't want to let go of one hand.
If I'm on a rock wall, I am not answering the phone, and I'm not doing the 2-finger tap. I'm hanging on for dear life. Turn the phone off.
They were using the safe examples of all of the things that you might be doing with your hands, carrying groceries or walking the dog, I think was another one. But for some reason, my mind went to other places where your hands are busy doing things, and that was bad. I shouldn't have done that. But Michael, what are your thoughts of the gesture thing? Was that something that's interesting, or is it going to be getting in the way? Are we going to end up with carpal tunnel because we're doing this all the time with our fingers?
I don't think people are going to use it that often.
That's the point.
It exists. It kind of exists now. There's an accessibility feature.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. So if you go into the accessibility features, there's a feature called assistive touch. Within that, there's hand gestures. There's 4 of them. And if you turn that on, it gives you a little tutorial of how to. And it's the same thing. You double tap, you single tap, you clench your fist for to do certain actions. It doesn't quite do this. I think the double tap goes back a screen, mm-hmm. and the single tap goes forward a screen, but they just kind of reincorporated that into a feature. They did the same thing a couple of years ago with the iPad. The cursor on the screen, that was not a feature in the main OS, but it was buried in the accessibility settings, and then they realized that people actually liked it. They brought it out, and then it became the Magic Keyboard. So it's not uncommon for them to do this. And that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. I'm just saying it's kind of a recycled feature. Like, you can go into your Apple Watch, try that right now before you get a new one. It's a little weird that it's only on the Series 9. It doesn't seem like it should be just for the new hardware. I don't understand it.
Couldn't it be ported back to earlier?
You would think.
Well, and I'm assuming it's using the sensor on the wrist, and it would, it can. Yeah.
There's not a single new sensor or chip or anything in the watch that would enable that. The S9's not doing it. It would be the accelerometer and the gyroscope, which is in all the watches. So
I did find it interesting that they did explain how they're able, a gesture like that is able to then trigger the watch. That was interesting because they were measuring blood flow and different mm-hmm. things that happen on your hand. That was the one time I was interested in some of the science part behind some of the things. I'm going to get to that as well. But I wanted to ask you guys, because Ken, do you own a watch, right? You have an Apple Watch, or did you switch?
I did.
You did? Okay.
I did. I had the Apple Watch Ultra from last year, yep. and I jumped back to Garmin this summer. So.
And Michael, do you have one?
Yeah, I do. I have a Series 8.
Okay,
Series 8.
The reason I asked you guys this was because the other feature that they advertised during this presentation was this idea that you could use your watch to locate your iPhone with new distance and direction features. So, so I don't know if you can currently do that or if it's just an audio ping. Is it just the audio ping now if you're trying to find your phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no precise location finding with the current Apple
Watch.
That's
okay.
That's that new U2 chip. That's
so what this reminded me of was the scene from Aliens, where they're tracking the aliens that are about to attack them, and they keep it keeps pinging you and telling you which direction they are, and then you realize that the aliens are either above you or below you. I don't know if this thing has altitude sensors as I'm walking around my house trying to find my iPhone, and I'm like, I can't hear it, and then I realize it's in the bedroom upstairs. I don't have a watch.
Altimeter on the Apple Watch. I'm not sure if that comes into play. With the iPhone, it does. So the iPhone has had this feature for a couple of generations now. It's just distance left and right.
Yeah, I'm just an old school guy. Where, when I can't find my phone, I just call. I go, someone call my phone, and then hope that I've left the ringer on, and then try to find it that way. Or I will go to the website and have it ping it if I can't find it through having my kids call. So, I think that the distance and direction was interesting as another feature, acknowledging that people do this. They leave their iPhones in places where they forget. So that was the other thing. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Real quick, Keith, on Apple Watches too. If there was a minor surprise, I was kind of expecting that if there were going to be an Apple Watch 2, that there would be one in black or carbon or charcoal or whatever, not the titanium case. And there wasn't. I mean, it's upgraded. It's a new version, I guess, but it looks exactly the same as last year's version.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you had an Ultra Watch. They did announce the Ultra Watch 2. What was the reason that you went from that to a different brand even?
Well, I had a Garmin for several years. I like it's actually more form over function. I like big, clunky, and round rather than. The reason I jumped to the Apple Watch last year was I had always said if they ever did a big one, I would, buy it and try it. And I liked it. It's a fantastic device. It really is. For me, it was more like when Garmin came out with the larger watch with the AMOLED screen, it really checked all the boxes for me. So that's why I jumped. And it does have, obviously much longer battery life. But, that was not a big issue for me with the Apple Watch Ultra anyway. But I was watching to see if there would be a new version in black. I would have been curious to see what it looked like. I'm not looking to jump back to an Apple Watch Ultra, but I was a little surprised because there's been a lot of talk about that.
Okay.
I was too. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 has basically nothing new. There's a new watch face that gets the S9 chip that you're not going to really notice. Yeah. Sure. Is it coming to the 1? It should. I don't know. They didn't quite clarify that, but usually they reserve some new faces for the new watches, which is, kind of a cheap gimmick. No one's going to buy a new $800 watch just for that. There's really nothing new. Is
the marketing around the Ultra Watch really for those gung ho? I'm going to climb Mount Everest. I'm going to deep dive to the depths of the ocean. I'm going to ride a bicycle for 500 miles. Is that the marketing towards that watch, or is it just because it's bigger?
That might be the marketing, but I don't think that's who's buying it. I think people are buying it who just like big watches.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I see them at the gym, and I don't think these people are running ultra marathons for 5 days.
Yeah. I see.
They just want something a little more hardy and less destructible, maybe, and with longer battery life, noticeably longer battery life than the regular Apple Watch.
Yeah, it's twice as long, and it's a nice looking watch if you like big watches. It's very different than the Series 9. It's thicker. It has a real rugged look to it.
Yeah.
It's obviously larger, 49 millimeters. So, and it's not that much more expensive if you're already spending $400 on a watch and you want something bigger. It's $799. You get the cellular connection comes with it, so it's really $429 versus $799.
Yeah.
So Oh no, $529. So it's not that much more. I mean, listen, it's expensive. They're all expensive.
Right.
But I understand why people would buy it if they're not extreme sports people.
Yeah, I think the thing with me and the watch, I did have an Apple Watch for a while, and again, but it was a hand-me-down from my wife. My wife would buy a new one, I get the old one, and then I didn't like the old one for a while. This was probably Series 3 or 4. It was early on. I gave that one then to my daughter. So I have a feeling that at least this watch I won't get for another 5 or 6 years. Basically the same way that I have my phones now. I never get the new one. I get a couple of generations later. So at some point, I think I will have a watch because I do like the heart rate monitor and some of the sleep, some of the healthier features of the watch. They made a point out of that in their opening video where they showed all of the lives that they've saved because of either the watch with the heart rate sensor or the crash detection on the iPhone. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Was that a powerful message for you guys, or did it feel a little bit like, oh, buy an Apple product or you'll die type of message? That's what I got.
I mean, it was powerful 2.5 years ago when they did it the first time. They've done that. They've done a version of that video every year, every Apple Watch event for a while. Listen, it's true. There are stories of people whose lives have been saved because of the features that are on the Apple Watch. It's true. But, they really hit you over the head with it.
Personal anecdote real quick. When I still had the Apple Watch Ultra, back in February, I was hiking with the dog on a trail, caught my foot on a root, slammed into the ground, and it immediately said, "It looks like you've fallen. Do I need to call 911?" Fortunately, I did not die or break anything, and other than banging up my knee, it was fine. But it was really cool. And had I actually been in trouble, it might have been a lifesaver. So, yeah, I think, you're right, Keith. You might die without an Apple Watch. You might die with one.
Yeah.
But it's getting a little old now. I mean, okay. I thought the thing about roadside assistance with the satellite connection, if you're in the middle of nowhere and your car dies.
Yeah.
That's a handy new feature coming to the iPhone, I guess?
The iPhone 15, yes. Emergency SOS is now, if you're off the grid, you can connect to a satellite. The cool part about that made me feel cool for about 2 minutes was that they've integrated this with AAA. So, and it's,
you'll be dead before AAA gets to you.
No, in fact, I love that if you are a AAA member, which is the most kind of like the most old person thing ever. Like, when I'm driving, when I got my license, my dad said to me, "Oh, make sure you have AAA," and it was, handed down between generations and generations. So I still have AAA. I don't use the other roadside assistance services through insurance. I've liked AAA. It's gotten me out of jams several times when I've blown a tire or anything like that. But to have like Apple, which is always this cool hip company, to team up with AAA, I just thought it was amusing that they would do that. But I guess if you're the biggest roadside assistance company out there, you might as well. And and again, I'm already a member, so I would get this for free if I bought this new iPhone.
You've got a ready-made audience of AAA members there ready to,
Yeah. And then you could pay extra if you didn't have AAA. You could then pay for this service for all of those people that are hiking out in the middle of nowhere and need that.
Well, hiking, yes, so what this does is it kind of supplements that emergency SOS feature. So emergency SOS is if you're in an emergency.
Yeah.
There are times when you're driving and there's no cell service and your tire goes flat.
Yeah.
Most cars these days don't have spares anymore. So to kind of augment that emergency SOS feature with the feature that says, hey, if you're like in a little bit of trouble, you're not going to die, but you still need help.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in Connecticut. There are times when I'm driving a couple of towns over and my phone's like SOS, like, what? There's no service here.
Yeah.
And I could probably walk a mile or two and go to a gas station, but it's a good feature to have. This is a big country. There's a lot of spots that don't have cell service. And, I think that's probably more useful than emergency SOS for most people because, emergency SOS is life or death.
Yeah.
This is more,
Mm-hmm.
My tire's flat, I'm running out of gas, or my transmission died and I'm in the middle of nowhere and I don't know where I am. So I think it's good.
Yeah, you mentioned that cars don't have spare tires, or some of them don't. Even the ones that do, trying to change a flat tire on your own, I mean, that's a skill that probably has gone away. I know my kids don't know how to do it, and I can barely do it if I need to. But again, I've got the AAA membership, and if that happens, I call them up and they tow me to the station or they change the tire for me. So I did like that. So all right, let's talk about the USB-C thing. Is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? They didn't necessarily think it was a big deal because I think most people knew it was because of the European legislation that they're moving into this. Like, is there anything that we need to talk about around USB-C?
I think it's pretty monumental.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
it's
had
interesting that they kind of downplayed it, even though it's such a big deal. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no surprise that they're being forced to do it. I feel like they probably should have done it a while ago. I also understand why they didn't. So when Lightning came out, there was no USB-C.
Right.
The options were, before that, Apple's 30-pin connector, which was clunky as anything, and the USB options were micro and mini USB, which were worse. So they developed their own port, which was great at the time. It was like, wow, this thing is amazingly cool. You can put it in the upside down. It's tiny.
Yep.
Charges. It was great. And then USB-C came along. There's rumors that Apple made USB-C. But even if that's not true, they certainly contributed to the development of it. They were part of the consortium with Intel and others that made the cable, and they're very similar. USB-C and Lightning are very similar. USB-C is far superior, particularly when it comes to data transfers. It can go up to 40 gigabits per second. So way better than Lightning. Lightning was capped at 480 megabits per second, as far as we know. We don't know. I don't have the specs for Lightning, but that's all Apple ever gave us, 480 megabits per second. With the new phones, the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus is still capped at 480 megabits per second, but the Pros now can do 10 gigabits per second, which is, you don't have to be a mathematician to know that's way more. And it does reverse wired charging, which means you can use your iPhone to charge AirPods. They said Apple Watch and AirPods 2. Mm-hmm. I assume at some point we'll be able to charge iPhone to iPhone, maybe. I don't know. But right now it's just those two products, which is great, I think. So the Samsung Galaxy phones and a bunch of others have had reverse wireless charging for a while.
Yep.
Which is kind of impractical because to use it, you have to flip your phone over and then put something on top of it for as long as it needs to charge. So you're not using either device. And it's slow.
Yeah.
This one, you can plug your phone in. You can still use your phone, charge something else, unplug it, and it's probably a lot quicker than wireless. We don't know the speeds, but we'll test that. And it's one cable now. Mac, iPad, iPhone, AirPods Pro.
Right.
One cable. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone on vacation. My son has an iPad Air. I have an iPhone, and I bring one cable, and the other device doesn't have the right one, and I got to go buy one. So now it's It's a lot easier. One cable, one plug, and you can charge everything. So I think it's a monumental deal. I understand why Apple kind of downplayed it a little bit,
right? Because
I mean, it wasn't like they called it out as a great new.
I mean, they did and they didn't. They did say one cable. They did show the charging. They did show an iPhone next to a Mac, and so I mean, they kind of downplayed it, but then they also, touted the benefits of it.
Yeah. I just think if you've had a lot of those different cables, and I've got 3 kids and a wife, and we all use the different Apple products. So now there's 7 different cables around the house and chargers, and I at some point we're gonna have to get rid of all of these or use dongles for a while until we buy another set of cables.
They do sell a dongle. Don't buy the dongle. The dongle's like $30. Just get a tape. Just get a new cable. The phone comes with one. So when you buy an iPhone 15, you get one.
So all of these USB-C cables will work. It's not like there's going to be a special Apple version of this.
Every one of them. They all will charge. Data transfer is a different story. Because if you want 10 gigabits per second, you have to get a cable that's rated for USB 3.
Yeah.
But as far as charging, they're all work the same.
Yeah, I think the average user probably
isn't
20-watt
charger outlet into your outlet.
The average user is probably not going to be doing a lot of data transfer, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's more for cameras and high-end photography.
Yeah.
I'm curious though. Do we know? Moving to USB-C, will that allow for faster wired charging, or does it depend on
There was never a limitation. It was always as much as Apple wanted to give us, as far as we know, of Lightning. Okay. Lightning was capable of probably 50 watts. USB-C is capable of 240 watts. Apple is giving us the same as it always has. Okay. In 30 minutes, you'll get about 50% battery life, and that's the way it's doing it. That's it.
I guess my question is it technically possible to have faster charging? Okay. So Apple is the limit here, but it could be done.
Of course. With the cable they give you, you can get up to 240 watts of charging. I mean, your phone would probably explode, but there are companies that do it up to 100 watts wired, 45 watts wired. There's been tests that, it's very limited. You can't do it for the full time because it gets too hot. Yeah. So you have to kind of like the first from 0 to 20, it goes really fast, then it slows down. Is it beneficial? I mean, in some instances, if you're really in a hurry, maybe. Yeah. But if you plug in your iPhone now, the 14 with Lightning, it charges pretty quick. In 10 minutes, you got 15% and you're fine. Mm-hmm. So,
I did want to ask. I want to talk about the Pro version of the iPhone 15 because we did see some new features that are only available on the. Is it the Pro or the Pro Max? I think it's Pro.
Well, both.
Yeah, both.
The Pro Max gets the camera. The Pro models have everything else together.
Right. So they talked about the action button, which is they replaced that.
Pros.
They replaced the slider thing. Well, first they announced it in titanium, and then the other thing that they did was this slider button that mutes the phone. They've replaced that with the action button. But I kept thinking that didn't we used to have a button that could do a lot of this stuff, and it was that big circle button on the phone on the front, or am I just mistaken?
That was a home button.
But yeah,
that brought you back home.
But I thought you could push that, and then like if you held it, you could do different things, and it just felt like. The action,
if you held it, you could bring up Siri. You can do that with the power button. The action button is different than all of that.
All right, so they're adding. There will be new abilities through this action button, right?
Yeah, you can control the primary function or the primary button, software button in basically every app because it's an API just like the Apple Watch Ultra. So let's say you have a timer app. Your primary function is to start and stop the timer. That's what the action button will do when you're in that app.
So we'll have it. So
it also works as a mute switch.
We'll still have a button on the right, correct? And then we'll have
power button. Yeah.
And then we'll have the little volume up, the volume up, volume down. Yep. So now we'll have a fourth button. Yep. And again, maybe this is just because I'm old and I'm a doofus sometimes, but for some reason this is a 13. I have, with all the different buttons, I've taken more pictures of my desktop background by mistake. Okay, Ken, you're laughing. Good. Am I the only one who does it, or is it? Okay, so I'm just imagining that with this action button, it's going to have like more of these accidental double push things that I'm doing that just irritate me. It happens more than I want. It remains
to be seen. So the screenshot thing, that means you're holding power and volume. So it's probably the way you're holding the phone. You accidentally have the volume down.
Yeah.
When you flip it to turn on. The action button it's not a short press. It's a longer press to implement stuff.
Okay.
Presumably that will cut down on accidental triggers, but it will probably happen. You'll put your phone from silent to ring accidentally. I do that now with the Switch. Mm-hmm. If I take it out of my pocket, sometimes I'll catch it, and then all of a sudden I'll get a phone call and it'll start ringing. I'm like, why is that loud?
Yeah.
So it happens now. I mean, listen, these things are in our pocket. We pick them up and we hold them and we do things with them all day long. There's going to be accidental triggers.
I still make accidental phone calls to my brother or to other people, and then
people do that.
You have to still explain. Oh no, why'd you call me? It's like, oh, I accidentally took it out of my pocket or something.
I'm not 100% sure. I get those too. I have no idea how that happens half the time.
Yeah,
because you have to unlock your phone. You got to open the phone app and you got to pick someone to call. I don't know how that's happening.
Yeah, isn't that always on? Like, weren't they saying that the new phone is now going to be always on or something like that? You're not going to have that blackout screen, or did I miss something else?
That was a feature with last year's phone.
Well, yeah,
on display you're talking about.
Yeah, it does have that, but that was also on the 14.
Okay, all right. So, all right. The other feature I wanted to talk about with the Pro was the addition. I mean, well, they didn't add it, but with the additional camera, they now have the ability to take spatial video. And I'm assuming they could do spatial images as well at some point. But again, it's another step forward to get you into this Vision Pro mode later. And I think when we talked about
100% for the Vision Pro.
Yeah, and so
there's no other reason for it.
Right. And so when we were talking about the Vision Pro announcement, it was that I liked that feature on the Vision Pro, but then said at some point the only way you could take a spatial video or spatial image would be with that headset. But now we're going to have a device that's going to be in our hand, and we can now take all of this, which would be nice if you buy the phone first. But then you're going to have all of these videos and images that you won't be able to watch until you get to that Vision Pro.
Is that the spatial video capture? Is that just the Pro Max, Michael, or is it the Pro and the Pro Max?
I believe it's both.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. Let me double check, but I believe
it was that part of the video. So it's not going to be on the regular iPhone. So it's either Pro or just Pro Max. It might be both.
You know, one of the things to keep in mind, Keith, I would assume this would be true, is that if, let's say that, you are planning to buy the Vision Pro when it comes out next year, and you want to start making these spatial video, home videos now, I would think you'd want to make sure you've got enough storage on the device, because I would think those files would be larger than just regular video files. I don't know that they talked about that, and maybe I'm wrong, but logically it seems like you'd want to be rethinking, your storage options if that's going to be something you're doing.
Well, they did make the announcement of, I think all of the phones have more storage on them, but then they also announced new versions of iCloud Plus. 6 terabytes and 12 terabytes. So they're obviously getting ready for the creation of these large files, because you've also now got a 48 megapixel camera on some of these. And so if high-end video, high-end audio
storage, that's a huge jump. 2 terabytes was the previous top end. You still only get 5 gigs if you sign up for free, though.
Yeah, did you get it? Did you hear about pricing for the 6 and the 12? Or
50 and $100 a month,
okay.
I believe.
Okay.
Let me double check that. Just quick, the Pro and the Pro Max both do spatial video.
Okay, so that's a Pro feature then. Okay.
Yeah, I think I pay for the 2 terabytes, but I've also had photos of my kids on my phones and in the cloud for 15, 16 years. And it's a lot easier for me to just upgrade the storage than to go through the photos and download them and figure out what I'm keeping, what I'm not, what I'm printing. It's just easier sometimes to just click that button and go, I guess I can spend another $5 to $10 a month.
Yeah, if you're using iCloud storage, everything's offloaded anyway, and it's all stored there. 6 terabytes is $30 a month. 12 terabytes is $60 a month.
That doesn't sound particularly expensive to me.
No, it's not.
The amount of storage you're getting there. I can see
if you need it, it's not bad.
Yeah, and they did call this out during the event yesterday. If you're a professional photographer, I mean, there are a lot of features here or filmmaker or video, you're doing videos. I mean, there are a lot of features here that will be very handy, from USB-C for file transfers to the cameras to the cloud storage. I mean, it's a bit of a niche audience, but it certainly positions the iPhone Pro lineup very well with those folks.
Yeah,
it's a niche audience, but it's not really, because YouTube those are just regular people like you and I. They don't have red cameras and production studios. Some do, but most don't. Yeah. When you can spend $1,000 and get a really good camera, really good video camera, 4K, top-notch features.
Yeah,
that's pretty compelling.
Yeah,
Good
one
point.
of the other things I wanted to ask you guys about was that when I'm watching a lot of these videos, and they've done this for 4 years now, where they don't do the live events anymore. But it always feels like when I'm watching these videos, I feel like I need a PhD in science, photography, videography, computer science, because it almost feels like I'm at the Apple Science Fair, where all of a sudden they've got the trifold cardboard and they're explaining all of the nits and the specs and the CPU. Is that just me, or is there some value out of learning what's under the covers, so to speak? Maybe for you guys, because you cover this, but
I think it's well, I mean, I find it interesting. I don't always understand every single last detail of the neural engine, but in terms of understanding this device that I'm paying a lot of money for, it's educational in a good way. I don't know. Do you get lost in the details, Michael? Probably not, because that's what you do, but.
Yeah, no, I like when they call out specific things that, like, rather than reading 200 or 300 words of like that, my eyes gloss over when they, because they explain it in a way that's easy to understand. They've been doing that for years. I remember back even when Steve Jobs used to do the demonstrations, like he would make jokes on the slides. Like I don't even understand what that means, but we have a lot of them, So I think it's important to both bring it down to a consumer level, but also talk to the people who do understand those things. Because especially with the camera stuff, like I don't know what those terms mean, but there are people who do.
Yeah. Like even with the displays, like they keep telling you about how many nits the display is, and I think I know what a nit is, but I couldn't tell you the difference between 50 nits, 100 nits, 200 nits.
It's brightness.
Yeah, it's just a measure of brightness. It's either super bright, which then leads me to think, okay, well, that's going to eat up my battery.
But I do think these kinds of details, Keith, for these kinds of devices, add a little bit of panache. I mean, okay, so maybe you don't understand the details behind a nit.
Yeah.
But you know that, your new Apple Watch can go to 2,000 nits, or that your screen can go to 1,000 nits or 500, whatever. You have a way of talking to other people about this hardware that, makes it feel a little special, a little bit like you're in the know. You know something now that you didn't know before you watched the event yesterday.
Yeah, but is that a selling? Is that a selling point, Ken? Is that's not real? I mean, how many times are you going to be with your friends going, "Oh, well, this thing has 2,000 nits"?
You don't know my friends. We would have that kind of discussion. No, I understand. That's not a conversation I would have with my mom talking about her iPhone. But if any of us were hanging out at a bar somewhere talking about hardware, devices, whatever, sure, we'd compare nits and nanometers and focal lengths and, zoom capabilities. And, you wouldn't spend the entire night doing that, I hope. That'd be kind of boring. But,
Apple also has to make the phone sound better. Saying it's brighter sounds fine. Saying it's up to 3,000 nits sounds like, wow, that's really bright.
Yeah,
like they have to also present it in a way without,
well, that's my other pet peeve with these presentations is Tim Cook and all of the people that are writing these scripts. It always feels like, and I'm going to borrow this from my daughter who told me this yesterday. She goes, "Yeah, it feels like they had an essay assignment where they had to write 1,000 words for their essay, and they only had 900, so they suddenly start padding it with lots and lots of adjectives. So every time I hear Tim Cook talk about it, it's the next generation. It's the industry's best. It's impressive. I get a list of adjectives. It's magical. It's impressive. It's collaborative. It's all of these adjectives, and that trickles down to all these other presentations too. It was like, open up the thesaurus and just add some more adjectives, because it's obvious that it's just padding at that point. That's just one of my pet peeves, I guess.
Well, I mean, that may be related to what we got. We've got phones. No, seriously, phones that are noticeably better in some ways than last year's model, but they're not, it's not a revolution. It's a minor evolution.
But it's the best iPhone ever. Every year, it's the best iPhone ever.
It is every year, and it always will be.
But it has to be. How could it not be?
Right.
If it's not, don't come out with a new one.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Like just by definition, it's new. It's got to be better.
All right. One other thing that took up a lot of time during this event was the environmental parts of the different presentation. For example, on the watches, they're not going to do any more leather. So, those poor cows can keep their skins, I guess, or good for the cows.
No leather cases for the phones either.
Yeah. And then, there's all this recycled metal and different things in the products. And again, they've done this before where they've talked about how much their sustainability and things, but then they added this Mother Nature video to the presentation, and it was Octavia Spencer playing Mother Nature, and I don't know. This was the one time I was happy that I could skip ahead, because
it was a bit of an eye roll kind of thing.
This was cringe for me. Yeah, Michael.
It's important and it's a big deal for the company. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, did they need to have it? Or could they have done this in another way? I didn't mind the parts when they were talking about individual products and how it's contributing to their 2030 goal. But this just felt like it was just like a big thud in the middle of the presentation.
Yeah, I agree.
It went on a little bit too long, I felt. It was at least 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The stuff they talked about, it wasn't all that new or even groundbreaking. And, you could also argue that, well, you also source materials from, questionable places, and you also use countries that, aren't the greatest for your manufacturing. And, there's a lot of things to criticize. Apple's big in the environment. This is a big goal for them. And like I said, I wasn't surprised to see it. I was surprised that it went on so long. And it's a big step, getting rid of leather. They had a lot of leather products.
Yeah.
All the iPhone cases, all the Apple Watch brands, the Hermes sponsorship, those were all leather. In fact, Hermes is still selling leather stuff on their site for the Apple Watch, but Apple is not.
Okay.
It's fine. There are a lot of people who that stuff is very important to them. They won't support companies that aren't making a meaningful effort.
Especially younger generations.
Are making a meaningful effort to cut down on their carbon footprint and all that stuff. And listen, Apple is the biggest company in the world and probably is one of the biggest polluters just by nature of how big they are. Mm-hmm. And they sell a couple 100 million devices every single year. But it made them seem a little bit more genuine about, the things that they're doing to help the environment. I mean, the skit was the skit. It was fine.
Okay. I guess I don't like
it was just
cheesy corporate skits.
That was my biggest problem.
I do wonder if Mother Nature will be back next year. This will be a regular thing now.
Oh boy! Why not just have that as if they bring back a live event? Maybe then we can have Mother Nature come back. All right, I'm gonna wrap up here. Ken, you already sort of spoiled it earlier, but just again, will Ken get this? You said for the iPhone, yes.
iPhone Pro Max.
Yes. Yeah. So you always go the top end, high end stuff, right? And if could you narrow it down in terms of why? Like what was the feature that did it? Was it the culmination of all of the improvements?
I do like to have the latest and greatest. It's probably the camera. I want to try the photography. I've got a long vacation coming up in October and want to do some sunset pictures. And,
okay.
Yeah.
But then you're not going to go back to the watch, or you're going to stick with the Garmin?
Oh, I'm sticking with the Garmin.
Okay.
I'm happy.
All right.
Yeah.
Big watch.
Yeah.
And Michael, I think you guys get all this stuff anyway, so I guess I won't ask you if you're going to get one unless it's a personal thing. I don't personally
get it.
Yeah.
I have people that review the products.
Right.
I'm going to buy an iPhone 15 Pro Max. I've had the last 2 years. I've had the larger one. I like it. I'm very excited for the lesser weight of it. It's very heavy and very big. 20 grams is significant. That's not like 2. That's the lightest Pro Max they've ever made. I like the camera stuff.
Okay.
I get a new iPhone every year. It's one of my, it's just that
And I'll be getting the iPhone 15 probably when the iPhone 17 or 18 are out, and it gets handed down to me.
2028.
Yeah. Just like the Vision Pro, I'm going to get like the version 3 or 4 at some point. So again, there's a wide variety of different lifestyles that we're all living here. So, all right, cool. Thanks guys for chatting about this, and we'll see you at the next Apple event, I guess.
Okay. Bye guys.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks.
That's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and add any comments that you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.